All right, we're live.
All right, all right. Hey, greetings, everybody, and welcome, welcome. It is a nice, warm, temperate March spring afternoon, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Appreciate everybody who is jumping in with us from all over the U.S. And again, always grateful, always thankful to have so many people from all over. And if you don't mind, go ahead and go on to the webinar chat and just post where you're calling in from. I know there's a lot of Californians. I recognize some names. Appreciate definitely people who I know and friends of mine who are jumping in. But if you don't mind, go ahead and go on to the chat. Let us know where you are calling in from. Just city, that'd be terrific. Oh, Massachusetts. Oh, love it. Bay Area, of course. Dublin, California. I do appreciate East Coasters dialing in. So appreciate all of you. So, and then go ahead and keep posting, letting us know where you are calling in from. As you know, our topic today is choosing an AI-proof college major. And we're going to be kind of digging into some current stats and some demographic looks into some demographics, trying to understand how that's impacting how students might choose their college major and how that might position them for forthcoming forthcoming careers. And somebody said they can't hear me, but my mic is on, so
Yeah,
I will
I hear you
assume everything
fine,
is good.
so you're doing
Anthony, you can
fine.
hear me fine?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
hear you, Elton.
Thanks, Anthony. The
From the
voice
void.
calling from the from the deep, Anthony. So, but no, appreciate. Yeah, we're going to be talking, going into uh, discussing a wide range of discussion with regards to college major. But before we get into that, I just want to maybe quickly go remind you we have a Q&A box. You can go ahead and post questions at any time. Anthony chimed in from the dark, but Anthony, as many, if you've been on our webinars before, Anthony will jump back in with us and we will methodically go through all the different questions that you post. So feel free to post any questions at any time in the Q&A box. And then feel free to just comment on the chat. Just, I mean, if you have a response to something I'm saying, I do feel like this is a conversation that lends itself to more group discussion, and I'm going to do my best to try to leave more time in the end for just commentary and questions and anything that you want to discuss together. So feel free I mean, be free to post anything you'd like in the chat for us to interact with and just to hear your response. So excited to jump in together. Let me do a quick intro of myself as I've always done. My name is Elton Lind. I'm the CEO and founder of Illumin Education. I've been doing college advising for almost 16 years. Here at Illumin Education, we work with almost 500 students a year, submit more than 2,000 apps a year, read 3 to 4,000 essays a year. We've had students admitted to every top 50, including every Ivy League multiple times over. Our internal admit rate to top 50, 15 schools is up to 7x the national average. And I've been very fortunate to have been profiled in some major outlets around the United States. So happy to give feedback, share, and lend whatever input I can. And actually, this is likely going to be maybe the first of a few conversations about college majors, career, AI, where that all fits in with how we might help our high school students prepare themselves to better position themselves to be successful and to thrive in the forthcoming season. So, um, topics for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the job landscape in 2026. We're going to discuss finding an AI-proof major if that exists, but we'll, throw that out there for the time being, finding an AI-proof major. And then we're certainly going to open it up to some questions. I'm going to jump right into a couple of quick data points. I don't love it being overly word text driven at the start, but let me introduce this is that the World Economic Forum some cross research with LinkedIn, and three data points that I think most of you on the call who are in tech probably have already been seeing it, but a couple of points. 88% of businesses have integrated AI into at least one core function. So I think that's I mean, even for us on the college advising side, we have also done at least that. Right. So 88% of businesses have integrated AI into at least one core function. 38% of executives expect to reduce entry-level roles that focus on doing, for example, junior analysts, junior developers, bookkeepers, and 70% are actively hiring for AI augmented roles. Um, and then thirdly, job postings requiring AI orchestration or systems architecture skills are offering wages 30% higher than traditional white collar jobs. And so there's a few other conclusions, but I thought these in particular were relevant to what I think a lot of us are feeling with regards to AI's integration into not just maybe our daily lives, but how that is affecting how that's impacting the job landscape, the type of people that people are hiring, and what our students might expect once they graduate from college. And maybe two ways to think about it, and I just to kind of maybe reduce it down even further. I think oftentimes this aspect of doing versus thinking, maybe just to bring in bring in a different metaphor. Maybe it's it's the aspect of baking bread versus running a bakery. And if you're baking bread, and which certainly I love bread, but if you're baking bread, it's about the technical execution. It's really about following the recipe, understanding how to knead the flour and knead the dough and really integrate the flour. And there's really a lot more manual work, as is evidenced, whether it's kneading dough or writing code. There is sort of this manual work that is happening. Whether it's doing testing on whether the product or bread is good, whether it's hunting down errors to make sure that whatever you're making is of proper quality, and even things like data entry are very much in many respects manual. But when you contrast that with the metaphor of running a bakery, it's much more about strategy and integration. Working across different disciplines, maybe again in the bakery metaphor, it's finance, facilities, and flour, but you can't just be an expert in one, and you can't just do one. You have to work across different disciplines. And if you have some form of AI, how do you set rules for how AI functions across your different business functions? And so you have to really think strategically and think almost parental as it relates to how the organization or venture or business is functioning. And then certainly you have to ensure that each part fits into a budget. And then you have to really think a lot more about risk management. So there's a lot of thinking, strategization, and strategic implementation that needs to be thought through with regards to the metaphorically running a bakery. This thinking as opposed to doing. And which means that, and another, from specifically the LinkedIn side of this talent report, they have discovered that there are a different array of emerging career titles. And so, like this one for forward deployed engineer, which I think any of us who've been in any sort of big corporate settings, I think these specific roles aren't a surprise necessarily, but I think to see very specific these specific titles sort of emerge in a very specific landscape, I think it's different. So whether it's forward deployed engineer, bridges the gap between AI tech and the company specific problems, AI orchestrator or agent manager, whether you're managing teams of AI agents to complete complex workflows, disinformation security officer, because I think often with the emergence of AI, there are questions about whether things are true or not. Especially, I mean, even you've seen everyone who's seen images or videos on social media, like you wonder whether something is really true, right? So there, it's becoming more important to have these disinformation officers where they're focusing on ensuring that corporate data, public communications are authentic. And systems architect, designing infrastructure where AI isn't just an add-on, but the core operating system. And then healthcare reimbursement specialists. It's not that there aren't people who are working on reimbursement, but the descriptor underneath the career title has changed to not just navigating the intersection of medical code. I mean, not just managing reimbursements, but navigating the intersection medical coding, AI billing, and insurance regulations because it is a legal requirement to have human oversight into these aspects of healthcare administration. So the career titles that may, I mean, even some careers that may not have seemed like they needed AI are now it's important to have some AI exposure. So, and this again, in this LinkedIn talent report, they've isolated four skill categories that are important for really anybody who wants to be successful in the forthcoming jobs landscape. Number one is analytical judgment. Certainly, the ability to look at an AI's work and know if it's correct. Cross-functional collaboration, as we have already established, that it's important to, and in this case, be a translator between engineering team, the boardroom, and other stakeholders. Governance and ethics, managing the liability of AI decisions, which, as I think we've all been feeling, that technology has gone faster than the boundaries that perhaps government or even businesses themselves can set up in order to really help them keep those aspects under control. And then lastly, emotional intelligence, which is building the customer and team trust that an algorithm can't replicate. And so I just to share, I graduated in high school in 91, which certainly you can certainly do the math on my age. And when I sort of went in, I was an engineering major. When I went into the job landscape, I I myself also felt like if I had the mentality, and also being from my parents were immigrants, and it was also very much communicated to me that if I could master a particular skill set, that was the best way towards job security and perhaps future financial stability. And the reality is that I didn't really think about the need for all these different skill sets at that time. And I'm sure many of you who might be parents on the call may have had similar experiences. The World Economic Forum, just to kind of give you one more and a quick data point on this, they did in 2024, they did what they would consider as a projection of the core skills necessary for 2030. And you can go ahead and do a scan of what's here, right? So, I mean, you can see what type of skills are becoming out of focus as it relates to manual dexterity, even kind of basic. I mean, programming is in that quadrant. Quality control, some of these things that can be managed by technology. But when you get into what they consider the core skills in 2030, you focus in on resilience, flexibility, and agility. You see leaderships and social influence. You see curiosity and lifelong learning. You absolutely see AI and big data because there's a required technical fluency that we all need to have as we go into this next season of time in industry. But the other skill sets that maybe oftentimes we're just relegated to just one leader or maybe the CEO or whatever it is. It's becoming more and more important that we all have some of these other skill sets. if we want to be functional in the job landscape. I gave I gave a similar talk like maybe a year ago or almost a year ago at a local high school. Um, it was talking a lot about college majors and also some college trends. And I did mention this aspect of how, I mean, we've been seeing it for a couple years where students need to really think outside of computer science. And I mean, I mean, I've been at this college admissions work for almost 16 years, especially at the heart of computer science time when everybody wants to apply into computer science. They all want that six-figure starting salary from Google, and have had plenty of students over the course of my years make themselves do computer science just because of the job security and understood. But was mentioning in that presentation again, similar to what I'm talking about today, that that we're seeing the kind of whole drop for computer science careers and hiring, and students really need to think about like going into thinking majors and thinking and preparing themselves to be thinkers and not just doers. And I did that presentation, and a guy from the audience came up to me afterwards. He's in venture capital, managing a portfolio of investments of around 26 tech startups. And he told me after the presentation I mean, he told me at the presentation that 50% of his of the tech companies that he invested in had to change their CEOs in the last 3 or 4 years. And almost every single one hired people who were not engineers. And they hired people who were strategists. They hired people who had some government background. They hired people who were just from different industries who had strong leadership experience. He said they hired people who have a lot of humanities backgrounds, but he said that they were hiring leaders specifically who were thinkers and not doers, and very few of them had tech backgrounds, like very decisively tech backgrounds, but they came in to lead tech companies. So the reality that it's important to have a more broad range of skills has been happening for a while, and it's ever growing in the forthcoming season. Maybe going back to that LinkedIn skills profile, the four the four skills that they outlined: analytical judgment, cross-functional collaboration, governance, and ethics, and emotional intelligence. It's not just for tech, right? I mean, I mentioned the tech example just now, but they were highlighting that like every industry is experiencing an evolution with regards to the type of requirements, skill sets that are required to really be successful in those areas. And they highlighted specifically healthcare and life sciences, of course, agriculture and sustainability. I mean, you can understand how understanding of AI and data can certainly substantially improve, industries in agriculture and sustainability, engineering, construction, finance and capital markets, and including education. And so every aspect of every industry is experiencing this reshaping, to where people who want to thrive in each of these industries really need to progress towards a wider range of skills. So we get to this aspect of how to choose a college major that is AI proof. And I know that like in the midst of what I just said, I wish there was a replacement for computer science. And unfortunately, there is no replacement for computer science. Now, I do want to say if you study bioengineering, you come out with a bioengineering degree, you can certainly apply to a biotech firm, and there are certainly still hiring bioengineering majors at biotech firms. I mean, there are certainly those types of roles that still exist, and very likely will continue to exist for a period of time. So, but it is still true that even in all those industries, they are experiencing a degree of upheaval and reshaping. and the impact on entry level roles is still an impact. So now, I think having had this conversation with a lot of students and a lot of parents, I mean, I always find that there is this sort of push and pull between certainty and curiosity. And whether this aspect of like, I mean, I have these early conversations with students about you should really think about what you're passionate about doing, where you have natural ability, where your curiosities go. And invariably by the time we get to college app time, I think it's this aspect of like well, if you're gonna study anthropology, then it's gonna be, I'm not sure where you're gonna get a job. I'm not sure where you're gonna be able to support yourself. And I absolutely empathize and understand. I think when families and students are paying this much to go to college, you want to make sure that when you graduate, you come out with something that will help you support yourself. So I don't have any qualms with that. I understand it completely. But the reality is that what was certain before is no longer certain now. And that's sort of like if we want to get into, we want to kind of counsel ourselves, there's a degree of radical acceptance that we need to embrace um, as it relates to where job markets, where careers are going. So what was certain before is no longer certain now. And where do we have to go from here? And I would say that it does push us back to where pushes back to curiosity. Bill Gates, over and not just some of his recent literature, but also I mean, quoted constantly. I mean, he says, "Rampant curiosity sets me apart, help me succeed." He says that success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvent. And his encouragement as being a lifelong learner, as being someone who's driven by curiosity, is that for success, I'm always encouraging people to learn a broad set of things. And again, anybody who wants to be successful in a role where you have to, where you have to work cross-function, cross-discipline, being able to understand a wide range of things is going to be helpful. So my thesis, my thesis today with regards to picking an AI-proof major is to begin with where you're most curious. Um, we all are different, and I wish, as much as I mean, certainly I've been again doing this work for a long time. I've worked with a lot of students. I think there's certainly a lot of parents who might want their kids to all be passionate about computer science, but we're just all different people, and that's also what makes us really quite beautiful and elegant. And there's a degree to where we need to honor that. So my encouragement, my thesis to you is to begin with where you're most curious, but consider double majoring or minoring in a contrasting area of study. So, I'll give you maybe an example of this is that if you're really interested in computer science, consider double majoring or minoring in history or political science. Or I think a really good combination with computer science is actually design, or maybe art and design. If you're interested in majoring in English, consider doing a minor in data science, or a minor in physics, or if you're want to major in business and econ, perhaps doing a minor in environmental science, so that perhaps you might be able to lend yourself to the business of sustainability or the business of water purification, solar, whatever it might be. If you're in one particular area, consider double majoring or minoring in a contrasting area to give you a contrasting skill set. And so, I was mentioning to you before I was actually this past last December, I was having dinner with a family that I worked with. Daughter was admitted early decision. to their prime school of choice. The family was super excited. Went out and had dinner. The dad is a CEO of a relatively large tech firm in the autonomous driving space. And we were just talking through and unsolicited. I didn't even ask him about this, but we were just talking about some of his team, and he told me that he had reduced his engineering team by almost 40%. But then he noted that his last two hires were two English majors. And he said that the two English majors he found were the two people best suited and most equipped to do prompt engineering and to get the most out of the large language models that he was working with in order to support the autonomous driving work that he was doing. And now the English majors, one person had a statistics minor, and the other person had some computer science exposure. Both of them came in with an excellent handle of language, but with some exposure to technology. And he sees himself hiring more humanities majors with some tech background in trying to expand his staff and try to build out capabilities. And I have a goddaughter who's an English major right now, and I keep telling her I think you need to consider minoring in data science or something like that, right? So this aspect of like combining contrasting majors is something that I think we're beginning to see more of the value of. And I think it is doable for students to accomplish once they get to college. Now, more and more, what we're also finding is that more and more universities are already building in these hybrid majors. And so, for example, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign has all these computer science X majors, computer science and anthropology, computer science and linguistics, computer science and philosophy, computer science and music, which I think is also fascinating. Computer science and crop sciences. I mean, so certainly their schools are already seeing the value of this integration and opening up more opportunities for students to explore. Northeastern, I think, has been doing this for a long time, and they are pouring more attention and resources into doing these kind of hybrid majors. So, whether you're business administration design, health science and business administration, international affairs, political science and business administration, computer science, all sorts of hybrid type um, academic exploration opportunities to really help students have a broader range of skill sets once they graduate from college. So, so my contention to today, my thesis, if you will, is I think it's important to begin by optimizing your college major, based first on curiosity, problem solving, and interdisciplinary thinking. And it's important to begin with where you're most curious. Now, I say this because I think if you're beginning with certainty, it's easy to go into a particular area because you're thinking that there's job security, and then realize that it may not be the best fit for you. I mentioned that I was an engineering major earlier. I was specifically a civil engineer, and did several civil engineering internships. I came out and was an environmental engineer for 3 years. And I just, as I think through that process, I did fine, but there really was a lack of motivation and interest. And so, but then the thing is that when you begin with where you're most curious, you begin naturally with where you have the most motivation. And you begin to fuel that curiosity and motivation with the topics and areas that really fit into how you were made, how you were created. And so my contention, begin with where you're most curious, and then don't forget about the other side of the skill set spectrum. Double major or minor in a contrasting area. And as I mentioned, this allows students to study in their natural area of interest, And as I, as again, maybe just to mirror that again, I feel like I've seen an innumerable amount of students, especially during really the computer science heyday, just come in and say, I want to do computer science. And you even see it in their grades and their transcripts to where maybe science is very challenging. They're really struggling through, algebra 2 and pre-calc, getting, maybe B's and C's, and they still want to do computer science. And the reality is that that they may not be best suited for it. I'm not saying that if you get a C in math, you can't get computer science, but I think you can kind of get the sense where not everybody in society was built to do one thing. And so if we optimize for curiosity, it allows students to study in their natural area of interest. But then we can still, again, allow students to develop a skill set that allows them to develop the skill set to be adaptable once they get into the job landscape. So my thing for high school students, find what fuels your curiosity and motivation. And so, whether it is the study of politics, whether you're really into Model United Nations, you could be certainly into mathematics. That's great. You can certainly be in computer science. That's amazing. That's terrific. Whatever fuels your curiosity and keeps you going, that motivation engine you're going to need for the rest of your life. And so let me encourage students, find whatever fuels your curiosity and motivation, pursue it outside of class, especially if you're in high school. So whether it's getting involved in clubs, summer programs, internships, whatever it might be, and then find problems to solve and or people to help. Because I think once you take that particular interest and you take it outside of just studying it and you try to problem solve with it, it opens up your natural scope to other like other areas of study. We had a student whose passion was French poetry, and she was having trouble with really kind of grasping some of the more older style of French literature grammar, which I'm not an expert in, but what she found out is that she could train a chat bot to use like more older French grammar, poetic grammar, in order to help her practice on improving her grasp of French poetry. And so this is a person who will very likely not be in computer science, who's likely not going to code. Her passion is in literature, but her desire to solve a problem brought her to want to explore technology to help her create a solution for herself. And so find problems to solve, people to help, and then once you get to college, keep an open mind. Let me give you a couple of quick examples. Uh, Brian Chesky, founder and CEO of Airbnb, was not an engineer. He was an industrial design major at Rhode Island School of Design. It began as a designer and certainly brought a lot of his design thinking perspective into developing Airbnb. But Airbnb is a tech company through and through, right? So this is where whether you don't need to be a computer science major in order to develop something substantial. Melanie Perkins, founder of Canva, BA in communications and psychology. Again, not an engineering background, and somebody who, again, certainly if you've used Canva as a graphic design software, you understand that there's a lot of her understanding of communication and psychology, I'm sure, was key in helping her develop a very usable platform to help people, to help sort of bring graphic design to the masses. And then John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods, studied philosophy and religion at UT Austin. Also, again, I'm sure his study of philosophy and religion was influential in him wanting to start a grocery outlet that was more sustainable and mindful of sourcing and making sure that it's healthy to the planet. So again, the reality is that like studying a broad range of things, can most certainly help all of us be successful in a wider range of industries. So again, maybe as a reminder for high school students, find what fuels curiosity and motivation, pursue it outside of class, find problems to solve and or people to help, and certainly keep an open mind in college. And then as I mentioned before, um, begin with where you're most curious. It's again, computer science is okay, history is okay, either foreign languages, philosophy, mechanical engineering, no worries. Begin with where you're most curious, but then optimize for adaptability. So consider double majoring or minoring in a field that has a contrasting skill set. Um, I'd and maybe my last word. I this is sort of my thematic last word for every presentation I've been doing for this year and very much for the rest of this year. But if I may, I know that there's a lot of parents on the call, but let me remind you who are parents that this is a stressful time for students. I think when I was applying to college, thinking about my careers, I just did not have as many choices. We just did not have as many choices as students do now. And there's so much access to information that that overwhelming access to information is a stress point for teens these days. And the pressure to make the right decision, the pressure to get into whatever school that they need to get into, the pressure to have to figure out what they need to do with the rest of their life. I think most of us didn't have that pressure when we were 15. But oftentimes whether whoever, whether it's society, social media, your peers, maybe sometimes our families, that pressure seems to be excessive at the 15 or 16 age mark. So let me encourage you, parents, to remind your students that you love them, regardless of how this all turns out, even in the midst of the confusion. Remind them that you still love them, still accept them no matter what. So, all right. Um, I'd love to I'd love to both hear comments and field questions. So feel free to go onto the chat, post whatever you'd like, to be frank. And I'd encourage you to post it so that everybody in the group can see it. And then before we kind of get into questions, Anthony, what are your as somebody who perhaps graduated from college, in the last maybe 7 or 8 years, you probably had different expectations for perhaps where your career might have gone as well. What are some of your reflections?
Wow, that's a tough question. Let me think about that. I
That's
mean,
me
I
posing the
think
question.
yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I think about when reflecting on that. I think there's especially for students, sometimes I mention to them that like, yeah, a lot of uh, you know, building a career, networking, a lot of this is students learning this skill of adaptability and being able to pivot industries, be able to build skills that are usable in multiple areas. uh, but yeah, there are, I think, part of Bay Area, I don't know about Bay Area culture, part of a lot of tech culture that students see, or maybe like if mom and dad are doctors, they have a set course, right? It's unlikely that if you're going to go down this, long pathway of like healthcare or something like that, and all the schooling, that you're going to also potentially suddenly pivot after, 3 4 years, right? So it has to do. I think it just has to do with how, yeah, how students, but also people are going to interact and think about how they are interacting with society and what is valuable to them later on, And yeah, again, it's a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old. How can you begin to define that? You really can't, right?
It's challenging for sure. So let me as we go through some questions, if I may ask you to go onto the chat and maybe post what you think um, maybe one thing you thought was helpful from this presentation, or one thing that you may contradict, you may not believe. That's totally fine. But maybe point out one point that you thought was thought-provoking for you on the chat. So go ahead and share that on chat, and then why don't we dive into some questions, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm sure the question box is going to fill up, so I'll just slowly start chipping away at it.
Mhm.
A question about like the admissions process, since I'm sure colleges are preparing to uh, be wary of student work that might include AI, but how is AI going to affect just for the admission reader standpoint?
Yeah, and that's a moving target that we are I in some sense may want to save it for another presentation. So, but as it relates to there are more and more schools that are also integrating AI into the review process. And like specifically, we interviewed Carnegie Mellon maybe like a 3 or 4 months ago, and they said that they have integrated some AI technology, while other schools have specifically said they have not. I don't have any reason to believe or not to believe them. I think it's fine. And I think the reality is that, as you can probably imagine, like students may want to consider using AI for their essays. And over again, as I mean, this is also from our internal experience and also from admissions officers who read essays. There's only like the AI college essay can only be so good, and I think that that is the reality. And then once, I think it was Northeastern who said that like they did an internal test about which they had the team read AI generated essays, and they got like 9 out of 10 correct on the guess for which one of the essays was AI generated. So if they can guess which essay is AI generated, they know, and they're already sort of turned off once they read an AI generated essay. So I mean, I don't mean maybe that for us that's a little bit of job security. I'm not sure, but it's there's still value to helping a student really tell their honest and genuine story in a way and in a voice that's true to them. So as it relates to AI specifically and what students are submitting, there's exceptionally mindful of what's happening out there. So.
And I know some schools, I think like I forget if it's, I believe it's Georgia Tech, but I might be, double check what I'm saying. But I think Georgia Tech's put out a policy of like, hey, you can use AI, just tell us how you used it, which is I think more open minded than others. And I think Caltech said something similar as well.
Yeah, Caltech said a couple years back that they were going to include a prompt that required people to use AI. So I haven't seen it yet. That hasn't appeared yet, but I heard it out of the mouth of the director. So.
And then a question about with if CS is going to be a little bit shakier with the coming years, do you think these students are potentially moving to the other engineering majors or any other kind of where do you think that you were mentioning earlier this student that might be in the past would who is struggling with the science classes but still potentially still want to do computer science, like where do you think that student is going now?
I mean, I mean, I'm hoping that I think what I was saying today might encourage some students that they don't need to be majoring in computer science in order to be viably hired into the job landscape. And so I think my encouragement maybe for that student who was getting C's, you know, it's okay to be honest with who you are and what you want to do, and maybe you might begin in other areas, but then going in and then contrasting it with a double major or minor in something technical, I think would be fine. So I do feel like with regards to computer science, I think and I think there's got to be half of this audience who's probably in tech, right? You know, and it's not so much that companies are not hiring entry level work. It's just that the demand for entry level work has dropped precipitously. There's no question, right? Um, so I think again, I think students, even if you're in college right now, again, I have a some college students that I know who are currently studying computer science. I think it's important to diversify their educational experience and consider like what they consider for their summer internships need to obviously not be coding and need to kind of span out into different especially like more AI orchestration, AI exposure to where that when they come out of college, they don't just have a computer science degree, but they have internships, work experience that will lend themselves to being able to integrate in a more AI saturated corporate world. So, yeah.
And then just another more open-ended, just any particular majors that you think would be more or less popular due to AI.
I mean, I think like I did kind of do a dig into that LinkedIn report, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I think in the short term, I think a lot of the engineerings I think are still very viable. I mean, we're obviously kind of looking at admission results, right? So like last year's computer science admit rate for UCLA was 3%, and then I'm sorry, 2 years ago was 3% at UCLA. This past year was 7%. So we're kind of hyper aware of like admit rates, but mechanical engineering also dropped like a rock, right? So this is where the integration of AI into hardware, that hardware, like being able to work with hardware, is still very necessary,
Mhm.
and maybe not immediately impacted by AI as much, right? So I think certainly maybe in a short term mechanical, the other ranges of engineerings are probably still very helpful. But there isn't the computer science equals job equals six-figure job starting salary. That's out the door, and there isn't a replacement for it. I think the only like for sure major is nursing. By the way, UCLA nursing program admit rate was 0.5% last year. So like but AI is not replacing nursing. That's not happening anytime soon. So if you want something that has job security, that's probably where it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm reminded of also like I think Anthropic put out some report where I don't know if you've seen it, Elton, but it's like this web diagram of trying to show like theoretically what AI could take in terms of careers or people's ability to work. And I think people were pointing out that I forget, I think it was agriculture and construction were the two that supposedly would be least impacted, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And certainly, there's certainly going to be. It's interesting that the LinkedIn report actually referenced specifically construction and agriculture as being industries that are going to have some makeover. But as far as like, I mean, who's replacing farming? I mean, I mean, not you and me, Anthony. So, yeah.
I'll read this one out. I think it's just a longer comment. So this is Elton. I appreciate the perspective of having students start with their curiosity and select a double major or minor in a different area. For the purposes of a college application, what does a student need to do with the second minor or major? Should they be, now I'm paraphrasing, should this be something that they present right in their college application, or would it be something to consider later on as they're going through, freshman, sophomore year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And technically they don't need to do anything with it in the college application. And so I think like I mean certainly if I were to say like let's just say this French poetry student wanted to study, maybe literature, maybe even French language, French culture, that's fine. They made this they trained this chatbot to help for she trained a chatbot to help herself and potentially help other students who are learning French poetry. I mean, I think it's interesting that I think that storyline on a resume, on a college resume in 2026, 2027 is interesting and I think shows a sense of adaptability on a student, but it doesn't mean that the student needs to make reference to it in their major. And so I think they can once they get to college, they can consider their double major or minor options when they get there. As long as like the issue is changing majors. So if you're, and, I would say this is more of an issue 3 years ago than it is today. But if you're changing majors from like say French to computer science, where computer science is over over index, over subscribed, then of course that's going to be a challenge. But if you keep your major and then minor double major, it's not changing into that other major. So you kind of avoid some of those issues. So.
The next question was exactly about like how to optimize when thinking about a dual major like that. And I guess I'll add on to it myself, but also Elton, how would you think about like helping a student strategize if, let's say, you're aware of the student's interest in like electrical engineering and that it's a much more uh, narrow pathway for that particular student when it's like adding a minor or major, whereas like, I went to CMU's business school, they effectively force you to have a minor in something else in order for you to graduate. Like, what do you think about that kind of structure wise for students?
I like the forcing students to have a minor. So I mean that's it is what it is, but I think that's the smart move for the future. But for the college app, and we're gonna do a trends webinar, which I think is um one particular trend that's gonna come up on the trends webinar is that there's too many applications. Theoretically, there's shorter read times. And so the need for the student's major to line up very coherently with the resume and their essays is going to be that much more important. So if I were to come back to the French student, and let's just say the French student wants to study French or French literature, I think it makes sense because if the student is a part of the French club, they're doing some independent research on 14th century French literature and the impact of the Renaissance on blah blah blah. And they were like developed this chatbot to study French. The storyline makes sense, right? So I would still come back to the student that regardless of whatever major, I mean, if it's engineering, if it's biology, pre-med, whatever it is, that it's still good to develop a clear storyline in your activities, in your essays, in everything that you do. Not to say that you can't have involvement in other things, but that storyline needs to be clear. So um, there isn't a double major in the application process. So what I'm proposing is for students to consider to broaden their educational experience once they get to college. And for Anthony at Carnegie's Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon, making you minor in something else is like kind of a blessing in disguise. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
can stress you out a little bit, but probably equipped you more to be ready for a different world. So.
And for folks curious, the minor I had to pick was stats, which I don't I
Which
don't
is
know how much I don't know how much statistics I still remember, so don't quiz me on that. Um,
relatable, no question.
but yeah, next question was saying people I think people roughly understand what AI's impact is going to be on like computer science, but what do you think this will look like for more pure sciences in terms of like physics, biochemistry, math? How do you think there's going to be an effect there?
Yeah, I mean, I think like because the reason why the part of the reason why there's been such a AI or such an impact AI's impact on computer science has been so significant is because there's been like everybody flocked to computer science, right? So you can call it a market correction, right? So again, you can call it like where there really were too many computer science people in the job market and any kind of shift in the job. I mean, and there are shifts in the job market that have been happening for generations, right? Even though this may feel very severe, these shifts have been happening for a long time. And the reality is that in this case, since its impact is in computer science, there have been too many computer science people that the impact is very significant, right? So I there is not that over indexing and mathematics, physics. I've always been a big proponent of the pure disciplines. So, in the sense where for students to study thoroughly mathematics, I would include English, I would include history, I would include physics, chemistry, mathematics, like the pure disciplines, combining the pure disciplines and kind of creating your own path. But I don't see it happening to those because there's just not as many people with those majors.
Last few questions. Let's see. Oh, I think this person was just responding about earlier. We were talking about like where these potential CS students might move to. They were wondering if data science might be the answer there in terms of yeah, in terms of a possible switch. But I
For
guess
sure. So yeah.
yeah, comments on data science as a major here.
I think absolutely for sure in the short run that is more viable, a more sort of career ready. But I do feel like what has changed drastically in the last year and a half could also change drastically in the next year and a half or 2 or 3 years, right? So I feel like um, data science, there's always a shift at Berkeley to where data science has exceeded computer science majors, and a lot of people actually shifting from computer science to data science. Again, too many grads, not enough opportunities, and same thing's going to happen. So I still think if you want to prepare yourself for the long term, you need to study a wider range of things. And so I think, so yeah, I do agree data science in the short term, for sure. No question will be more viable than computer science. No question. So,
We've
all
gone
right.
through all the questions. So
All right. I'm just looking at some comments. I appreciate people posting comments. Um, let's see. Nursing does not have enough folks to teach, nor ability to expand broadly. Um, for sure. My mom was a nurse. Anthony's mom was a nurse. We all love nurses here. That's, that's for sure. So, my dad was also in the hospital last year. Um, Loved most of the nurses. So, no, that's for sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other comments, questions, anything that was helpful? Um, if not, maybe a last question from me is that what else do you want to hear about? I'll tell you what's coming. So we do have a trends because I mean every year emissions cycle has things that are happening, mostly micro movements, but we try to isolate those micro movements and share about them every year. So that trend is coming. That trends presentation is coming. We are going to do a webinar in a couple weeks on internships. So we do have our friends at Polygens who are going to be doing a panel with us together to talk about the importance of doing internships while in high school. And then we're going to be a whole slew of other things. But if you have a particular topic that you would love to hear more about, please post it in the chat. Anthony is excited and ready to collect those. So go ahead and post them on there. Is there a last question here, Anthony?
yeah, this final question about looking at grad school to get question about yeah grad school to get more specific experience in a content area compared to joining the workforce to get a wider gaining expertise in a wider slash varied fields.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. I think, but I do. This is at least what we're. I think. I mean, again the observing the kind of career job landscape. I think is. I think it's one of those things where it's kind of helpful for some industries and maybe becoming less helpful in other industries. Where I feel like, maybe specifically like if you wanted to do a deep dive into a particular, like whether it's quantum computing, some of those things that are very at the forefront of, like, say, engineering innovation, I think it makes a lot of sense. I do feel like anything longer than like 3 years, technology, I mean, the world has changed. The world is upside down in like a year and a half, right? So like being somewhere for 3 years for a master's or PhD program seems kind of maybe not as wise these days, but if you're going to go in and do 2 or 3 semesters in a hyper specific area, that makes sense. I do feel like MBA programs are still of value. I do feel like consulting, like maybe some of you are in business consulting right now with maybe one of the big consulting firms. There are shifts there as well to where like it still matters to have an MBA from a big name school, but I think hiring changes are also kind of shifting to where that's maybe not as critical anymore. I have a couple of my former students who I super love. We keep in contact. They're going to business school, but they've also reported on some of the changes, and they're in like Bain and McKinsey and some of these big consulting firms. So there are some shifts, but yeah, I think it depends on which area that you are thinking about, and grad school can certainly be helpful, but I think those landscapes are changing too. So, all right. Um, Anything else? All right.
Good. All right.
All right. Appreciate everyone, Joe, jumping in on us. I know it's right in the middle of dinner. We might think about shifting the time, and, but thank you so much. Appreciate the East Coasters for hanging on with us, and would appreciate yeah, any suggestions and or feel free to email us if you have a topic you want us to cover. But grateful for all of you, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.